Well, I will call the meeting to order at 6:30, and Tyler has a couple of announcements he'd like to make, and then we'll start in on the agenda.
Yep, legally we have to say the meeting's being recorded, you just heard that. And in the back, there should be an attendance sheet. We need to get everyone who is here in person signed up. So if you haven't signed up on the attendance sheet, please do that before the meeting. Thank you.
First thing is a few public comments. I'm going to make some myself. I'm going to open it up to the table if they have things they would like to say. But just by way of introducing what's happening tonight and what's happening in the bigger picture, I want to start by thanking Dana and the entire staff at the school. They come to work every day, keep our students engaged and excited about learning. And they know full well that there are big changes in the coming years. So much appreciated, Dana and all of the staff. The school board has been meeting with Dana and with the staff at staff meetings to make sure that as far as anybody understands anything, that the staff are up to speed on that. So that we just really felt like it was crucial that there be good communication with the people who have put their lives working into this school here. The school board has also set up a mechanism whereby staff members can be directly in touch with a school board member anonymously if they want to say anything or have an opinion or whatever. So we felt that was also a good way to just make sure everybody knew they were going to be heard and respected. Sometime in the coming months, the school board will hold a school district Australian ballot meeting, probably on the regular date in March, with items on the warning concerning the coming year's structure and budget. The articles on that warning will either include a pared down budget for running our school with fewer students and staff, or it will include an item to change Marlboro from an operating school district to a non-operating school district. And so we have put together, Dana and Heidi have been working together to come up with a couple of options. And now nothing is cast in stone at this point. Everybody should understand that. Heidi calls it the 30,000-foot view. We've put those two options are together in the packet. If you have a packet and you take the little clip off, there should be two separate documents in there. One is a budget for option A, and the other one's a budget for option B. Much can still change, but included with the structure for the coming year at the Australian ballot, there will also be an article to pass a budget to pay for whatever that structure is. So the Australian ballot is yay or nay. So we will be putting one option on the ballot and a budget to go with that. And as we get more information, working with the staff and the administration to try to decide which way it's going to be, everybody has to understand, I've said it once and you'll probably hear it again, that much will probably change. So what we're doing tonight is just throwing out some spitballs, you might say, to say, well, here's some options that would meet the educational needs of the school, and here's how much it would cost, or what would it cost if we were to become non-operating. So the purpose of this meeting tonight and the next one, December 13th, is to explore the options and inform ourselves as to what the effects of them would be on our taxes. Heidi's been working overtime. What you don't know is that she has to do budgets for all of the school districts within the supervisory union and the supervisory union budget as well, and complete the professional audit, which takes, I don't know, it sounds like it takes weeks to me. So anyway, thank you, Heidi, for doing that. But she has put together really a comprehensive look at what the budget would look like for the two options, and the latest revision came through, I think, at 4:15 this afternoon. So, we know you're working hard, and much appreciated. There is time tonight also for public comment. So as you can see from the agenda, we're going to go through Bob's going to talk about the enrollment projections as done by Bob and his staff at the SU. Heidi's going to talk about the budgets and the comparisons, and then we open it up for feedback on that. We ask that you be brief. There may be lots of comments, and if you have spoken once, then make sure everybody has a chance to speak before asking to speak again. Don, I'll introduce Don in a minute, but he'll be the moderator for all of that, so, yeah, okay. Don, okay. Yes, and also that is true for people who are on Zoom as well. Everybody will have a chance to speak. If you raise your hand, we'll try to figure out what the sequence is here, and we'll make sure people get a chance. Third time, I'm going to emphasize that there's so much that we don't know now. Much about how the state is going to fund education in the coming year is not yet known, but it will be known a lot better by our December meeting. So we're throwing some numbers at it. I feel pretty sure that they are going to be close to what the final numbers are, but we will have much better numbers in December when we look at that. So that's just keep that in mind. And I want to say also that we have been working with Lynn Law, the sort of primary, premier, I don't know if that's quite the word, legal support team for education in Vermont to help us figure out how to accurately get articles on the warning that we want to get on there. So that's, it's always interesting. You basically have to do it right. So having said that, other board members, anybody at the table have anything you'd like to add?
The only thing I will say is, as Dan said, our staff, our faculty, our students, our families, it is as magical a place here at Marlboro as it always has been. I heard the history before I came, and everything that I've experienced here has been consistent with that. So I don't know what the future holds, but I do want folks to know that this is a place to celebrate today as much as it was to celebrate 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Our kids are really lucky to be here.
So thanks everybody for participating tonight. I think if you don't know them, let me introduce Linda and Don Furman. Linda's the online moderator person, and Don will be our live and in person, absolutely. So when it comes time, especially for public comment, Don will be the one to recognize people and to go from there. So really the first item on the agenda is, Bob, is your spiel on enrollment data, and I think there's been some handouts, but we can definitely share it on the screen as well. So.
We don't have it for the screen, but everybody has it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
on the back table.
It'll be on the screen in a moment.
Will be on this screen?
Yeah, no.
Oh, in Zoom land, yeah. All right, so hi, I'm Bob Tebow, I'm the superintendent at Winter Central. And if you haven't met me before, apologies for this being sort of the first time, because this is obviously a very tough situation, and yeah, we're gonna try to get through this together. We have on our staff a data analyst who has been working closely with Gail here, who's been recording the births in town over the last several years and trying to take those numbers and project forward what the enrollments will be. And so this sheet that you have in front of you, it's really the same chart, but the top chart highlights sort of the this year, the next 3 years, and just to explain, give you a little information. -2 are not negative 2-year-olds. Those are pre-K 3-year-olds. And then -1 is pre-K 4-year-olds. And the zeros are the kindergartners. So just so you see how that works, it kind of makes sense. The red represent the kids who are currently here. And can't take that. And the darker color represents the kids who will be coming. So when you look at these charts and you're analyzing these numbers, particularly as you go into the future years, you have to actually add the two numbers together to get what the projected total is. So next year, with no changes whatsoever, we project to have 47 students here. And then you can see how that progresses on through the years. But those numbers, it's the yet to comes and the ones who are already here. The lower chart is really here just to show one of the models that Dana and Heidi have been working on is one that has reduced grade offerings here with some ability to tuition students, the younger students out. So this projects what the numbers would look like if that plan were in place. So you can see the numbers are lower because it only starts with grade 2 and shows those years. So that's what that is based on. And then on the back, the other thing the board had asked me to do was to reach out to regional schools and districts to find out what the receiving capacity would be if the town chose to go non-operational. And so, again, because it's declining enrollment everywhere, it's not just a Marlboro problem. Not surprisingly, everybody around us is like, yeah, we have room. And in fact, most of the schools I talked to said they could completely accept the entirety of Marlboro School and just keep rolling. I know that a lot of the conversation that's happened at the previous public meetings around sort of merger stuff and at the board level there's been a little bit more of an emphasis on Academy School in West Pratt. And so I personally reached out to the principal there, Kelly Diaz, and we had some conversations about what it would look like. And she assures me that the Marlboro says she could take all of them and she would be, they would have a very, very nice home with her there at Academy. So we don't know what's going to happen, but I wanted to be able to share that, if the district ends up going in a direction where you have, in essence, choice because they're tuitioning out, that really any of these schools listed could receive students. And just one little caveat, which most people maybe already know, but with Act 73 passing this past year, what you would not be able to do is you would not be able to send kids to private schools that are not on the state list. There's a list of 18 schools the state has approved through the Act 73 process, and only those schools can receive public money. It has to be in-state, most of them are public, there's some privates, but I won't get into all the details. But, so anyways, that's the situation with the enrollment projections. Happy to take any questions that people have, I guess.
One back there. Yes. Do we have any idea of what a model of receiving tuition would look like? Accepting students from neighboring districts as students here?
Well, I mean, the challenge is, as you can imagine, that in order for us to receive public tuition from another district, that district's board has to be willing to pay that tuition. And because there's space in all those buildings, you're not going to find too many boards who are willing to really do that. And there's really only one legal avenue to do that for that sending district, and that's if the receiving school is more geographically convenient for the family. And it's kind of amorphous in the law what that means, but it's designed for things like, I'll give you the example in West River, when Jamaica School has closed down, you have families that live in parts of Jamaica that to come down off their hill, come into Wardsboro, drive by the Wardsboro School, go back into Jamaica, and then drive to Townsend, to the school that they were being assigned to. So their argument was, I'm driving by the Wardsboro School. That's the kind of thing that statute was intended to cover. So that's the long answer. The short answer is no.
I have one question, not critical, but in this year's 7th grade cohort, there are 8 students, and in next year's 8th cohort, there are only 7. We know someone's going to be flying the coop?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
I'm curious if that capacity to absorb by the other schools has been projected out over the next 3 years, because they're presumably running the same numbers as you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've sent them this chart, and they were like, yeah, no problem. I mean, my sense is that there's space, and even frankly, if they had to, let's say, add on a teacher in grade 2, that they're going to be able to, because they're going to be receiving tuition money in order to do so. So for them, it's not a problem at all. Physical building space would be the only limitation they would have.
Well, I think there'll be plenty more time. If questions about the enrollment come up later, we'll take them later. Heidi, do you want to start in on the budgets? I think, let me repeat that the one option which includes keeping the school open in a smaller structure does include paying tuition for pre-K, K, and grade 1 for them to go to other schools, because those are the classes that are so small that we simply can't afford to hire a teacher to teach them and pay a teacher's salary, which the teacher deserves. So I just wanted to say that, but yeah, go ahead,
Okay,
Heidi.
thank you. I'm Heidi Russ. I'm the business manager at Wyndham Central. I've been working with Dana and talking about her vision as to how we could keep the school open, and so that is how I've drafted a budget based on Dana's vision. So this first part of the packet starts with what's called Budget A, which is keeping the school open, and this is, I'm going to go through some high-level information about it and look through the budget page by page until we get to what the numbers look like, and then we'll go on to Budget B, which is the non-operating budget that I put together. So health insurance increases have been indicated to be 7.4% for fiscal year 27 through our VHI Blue Cross Blue Shield program. Certified staff increases per the master agreement that was recently signed for this year as a 6% increase for certified staff. I've calculated non-certified staff increases at 2.8% based on the cost of living that's put out by the federal government. And let's see that this proposal would operate grades 2 through 8, tuitioning out pre-K through first, as Dan just said. There would be reductions to some staffing. The grade structure would be grades a 2-3 classroom, a 3-4 classroom, a 5-6, and a 7-8. There would be no instrumental band, that would be cut. The modular building that's been being used would be returned, since we would only have approximately 38 kids in the building. There is a surplus from fiscal year 25. Now that this is unaudited, the auditors have been there, but I haven't received a draft yet, so obviously this number could change a little bit, but we're expecting $205,000 as a surplus, and that will be going back to the taxpayers as being applied to the tax rate right off the top. So that will help with a little reduction. The budget proposal that we have put together is a reduction of 7.8% from the current budget we're in. However, the estimates for this year's long-term weighted ADM, which is how we calculate and come down to a per pupil cost, it's one of the components of it. It has been decreasing in Marlboro the last couple of years. I've recently got some updated numbers today because it's being calculated currently at the Agency of Education, so it's not finalized, but I just got the number of 192.72, and that's a huge decrease from 219.73 from last year. So that's a real impact. And then the excess spending threshold, which is determined by the Agency of Education, it's in law, and it was something that was in place prior to COVID and then was temporarily discontinued until this year. So that sets a number of what, based on what schools are spending across the state, and then it uses the NEEP inflation each year to calculate what they are, the goal for each school. So this just came out this morning, actually, that they're pretty sure, but it's not formally approved yet, that it's going to be $16,470 per pupil. This model of the budget has per pupil costs with keeping the school open at $18,192. Since that is over the threshold, there would be a penalty applied, and based on the numbers, and I'll show you the calculator after we're done, it would add $1,722 per pupil, and that would bring the per pupil rate up to $19,914.
Could you quickly repeat what you said the LTWADM is?
It's in parentheses, long-term weighted average daily membership. So that's kids that are in the buildings or that are being counted, excuse me. So tuition students that are being counted in schools, attendance, and it uses the date in October as the day that they determine that's your average.
That's for the district?
For the district, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So the obvious question is, why is it 192 when we're
Right.
showing like 50-something kids in the
Yes,
building,
I'm sorry,
right?
yes.
So the two things are different, is it does include the secondary students as well, and it includes the weighting. So students who are in poverty count as more than one student.
Your school
Students.
has rurality. so-
Rurality, so those kids get an extra weighting. So a student who might have some learning challenges and
Yeah.
live in a rural area and be poor might be worth over 2 kids. So it's just a weird formula, but that's how they calculate it, it's a weighted thing. That's why it looks so different than what the actual number of kids in the seats are.
And so I have this little disclaimer. I just want to be clear that as we look at the documents I put together that are the tax documents, I am not, there's no definite numbers yet. One of the calculating factors is a yield that's put out by the legislature. It doesn't actually get voted on until June, but we usually find out in December an approximate number. That number going up and down also impacts the taxes that ultimately get determined, as well as your common level of appraisal. So there's a lot of unknowns at this point. My goal was to just give your community some ideas of where it was going with a ballpark number for what we could do keeping the school open. So I am gonna go down, talk about the reductions that have been put together. So reducing band, program, and a position saves $27,000. We would be reducing personnel that does part-time custodial work and food service work, and that's a savings of $55,000. This is salaries and benefits. A classroom teacher would be reduced, so there's a savings of $119,000. A pre-K assistant would be reduced at $41,000. 2 classroom assistants for $97,000. Returning, the building operations expenses, we were able to shave about $33,000 off of there. Returning the mobile classroom will save about $40,000. And there's a bus lease that's being paid off the current year, so that number was higher in fiscal year '26, so it's saving $75,000 in the next year's budget. For a total savings of $487,000. Increases are assessments that come in through the central offices, Wyndham Central's budget. There's the MTSS and the general fund. Also, there's the tuition for pre-K through first grade. So essentially, there's approximately $300,000 increased in the budget from last year, and your net savings is $189,000. Whoops. Ooh. What happened? There we go. Too many little things. So I put down at the bottom of this just the savings between under operating versus non-operating. And there is savings, you'll see the number, the expenditure budget from last year was $4 million. So you can see the numbers are down. So I'm going to go into the first budget, turn this around, increase this a little bit. So the beginning of this budget shows the pre-kindergarten program, and as you can see, for the column that's fiscal year '27's proposed budgets, it's all zeros except for tuition. So I'm estimating 4 students at $4,100 for $16,000. I've reduced out of the budget any of the services, art, music, PE that was associated with the pre-K program. And we go into elementary on the next page. So you can see here, there is 5 full-time teachers in this contract, as well as 1 paraeducator. You can see the reduction of the paraeducators There was 2 of them that were removed, so you see that in the variance column. Most of the expenses, salary, benefits, everything is pretty much the same as the current year, except for the indication of the 5 students we've calculated at a rough estimate of $19,000 for kindergarten and first grade to attend outside of this school. And so that's an approximate number of 95,000. So that's one of your increases. Then we see we still have music education, not band, but music education at 0.4 per FTE. So that's still in the budget. We go on the next page, we have secondary staff. Currently, there's 1 secondary listed under there, but I know that there's a couple that will be working with secondary students. It's just a financial software thing. There are currently expected 38 students in secondary that you are paying tuition for. So that's between 2 lines because there are public tuition and private tuition. So that's approximately almost 800,000 between those 2 that you pay currently and will continue to pay. There are, excuse me, special ed assessments. So that's what, this is split up between primary and secondary. Wyndham Central's has the special ed program through the central office, and all the school districts are assessed, and it's based on the 2-year average of students that are within your school district, your tuitioning as well as you're in the school building. So that's a rolling 2-year average that determines what you're assessed. So you'll see that there. Going down, you have art for a 0.4 FTE of a teacher. The next is the music education services. This part is where the band teacher was, and you can see that's 0 now. Following down, we have a position for a 0.4 phys ed teacher. Currently, that is not filled, so we have a substitute that is covering phys ed, but would continue to be in the budget if the school was running. We have guidance services, and that's at a 0.8 FTE, so 4 days a week or something like that. We have health services at the same 0.8. Following page shows we have a library teacher at a 0.4 FTE. And then we have some Board of Education, the school board's expenses, and this is where you'll find the Wyndham Central General Fund assessment. Essentially that covers the superintendent's office, the business office, and some technology services. So that's the assessment that has been determined for this year, for this coming year, fiscal year 27. There are also audit expenses. They've been going up, so there is an increase there. Legal expenses, I increased a little bit based on the fact that there could be some legal things that need to be determined going forward. And then we have the administrative office for Marlboro School, a full-time principal, 0.8 clerical staff, administrative assistant. Again, most of the expenses of the office are all pretty much the same. The building operations, the next section down, there's that reduction of a part-time help with custodian services, so it's a 1 full-time position. There are some reductions to the maintenance budget, but otherwise, just furniture and equipment has been reduced there. And then there's transportation. The transportation budget has 4 part-time individuals that has done, I think, a revised busing service this year with 1 trip in the afternoon. Is that correct, Dana?
Yes.
1. That would be the same for next year. And then you pay administrative fee for just overseeing, you have a great food program here. The central office just has a small fee because we handle the monitoring and the state submission for reimbursement. And the last part of the budget shows the extended day that the budget helps to fund the after-school programs. So all said and done in this budget, keeping the school open, the bottom line is $317,000 less than the current year at 7.8% reduction. Moving on, the next page is revenue, and we'll just go right into the tax calculator page. So this I was working on today with some of the new numbers. You see the top line has expenditures based on the bottom line of the expenditure budget that we just looked at. We have the offsetting revenue, which was what's on the revenue page, but also the 205 estimated return of surplus from fiscal year 25. That's plugged in to give you a net education spending of $3,505,938. When I plug in the long-term weighted ADM estimate of 192.72, that gives us our spending per long-term weighted average daily membership to be at $18,191. So if you follow that down, you'll see number on line 9, the estimated excess spending threshold I mentioned at $16,470. So the difference between what the per pupil spending is based on this budget and what the state is allowing is $1,721. So the way that penalty works is it gets added on to the per pupil spending. It gets figured out with the yield, which again, this is the yield from the current year. I can't predict what it's going to do. And it gives an equalized homestead tax rate of 2.3283. So again, the CLA would be an impact. I'm using the CLA from this current year when it was determined at 103.37, which is helpful. But it shows an increase of your taxes because your taxes are being paid based on the inflated per pupil cost. And so again, very high level. I'm not saying this is what your taxes are going to be for sure. I'm just saying, given the numbers we have and the numbers that I don't have, but using the current year, that's what that looks like. The next part of your packet, do you want to stop or do you want to go on?
Yeah, Heidi, maybe a good time, and I think if people are wondering, right down at the bottom of that very last page,
Yep.
published FY26 tax rates of $1.89 essentially, and estimated tax rate with the threshold and everything of 232. You can see what the tax rate impact would be, at least preliminarily.
Yeah.
You could just compare those two numbers. And further questions about the specifics of this budget?
No?
One question. So next year, we're looking at, we have on this budget 2 to 8, we'll have 39 students enrolled. And then the following 2 years, it looks like there'll be 33, which is a reduction of 6. How is that going to, these numbers, that's a big chunk. Is that going to be a problem for future budgets?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I think what we're looking at now is a solution for the coming year, because there's not a lot of time between now and when we have to have these votes. But then it gives us another year to then continue the discussion and say, where do we go from here?
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, I was wondering, we're looking at next year, but then if you look at the numbers of students the year after that, what is that going to look like? And my point is just, we don't know that yet, but we're trying to get through the coming year, and then we'll go from there. Yeah.
I have a question that I think is related. Is the vision in this budget that it would be continuing to operate as a 2nd through 8th grade school? Or is it the assumption that we lose a grade every year?
Well, I guess I would answer that the same way as I did Paul's there. I guess I would say probably, yes, because I don't see how we'll continue to have these tiny grades coming in. But the year after the coming one would give us some more time to try to figure that out.
So we would decide again.
Yeah, yeah, and, but have more time to have the in-depth conversation. Go ahead, Jamie.
No question?
Yeah.
It is a minor thing, but it says on the first page of the operating budget that the grade structure would be 2, 3, 3, 4. Does that mean second, like you'd split up third grade into those?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move into the non-operating budget. The first page with just a few pieces of information, if I can get it to, there we go. So under Budget B, this non-operating narrative, the school would be closed. However, the school district would still own it. There hasn't been any discussion about anything else, so unless the board made other arrangements, the building is still owned in this non-operating budget. All grades pre-K through 12 would be tuitioned out by school choice under the regulations of Act 73. I have included a part-time custodian in my budget numbers in case repairs were needed and to check on the school building. The board has indicated that they would still provide some busing for students to some out-of-district locations, still to be determined. They have suggested a severance package for employees because it would be a hardship since they're finishing out the year and then looking for a job. We still have a surplus of the 205 estimated surplus balance from 25 that I'm using in this calculation to reduce the cost. Again, I mentioned the long-term weighted ADM because it's still, I did not change in this. This was an ongoing thing, so it's not 180, it's 192. So ignore that, I apologize. It was changing moment to moment today and I missed that. The budget proposal this time is a reduction of 17.3%. And in this scenario, the excess spending threshold of 16,470 is not, we are not over the threshold. It comes in at 16,168. So there is no penalty involved with taxes. So we'll go on to this. It's pretty quick. On the first page, you see the pre-K is still the same with an estimated 4 kids attending and you're paying tuition. Otherwise, you've got zeros. On the second page, estimating about 43 kids. And the reason it's higher than, well, we have to also allow for there may be kids going to some schools that are parent paid, or there could be home study students that come out and decide they want to take use of school choice. So again, that could increase or decrease, but I averaged it at 43 students and the cost would be an average of $822,000. There would still be assessments, so the assessments are still special ed because the school district, our SU still has to provide special ed. If kids are in other schools, we still have to pay for services, so that's still an assessment to the school building or to the school board. And that's in 2 places, primary and secondary. Zeros until you get down to the Board of Education. There is the SU assessment for the business office because we still pay bills and still help with the board to make decisions as we go forward. There is a highlighted number of 210,000. That was a board suggestion to help with the 21 individuals that would be losing their jobs. So that is in there. We have audit services, but I did decrease it because there's a lot less work to be done with a non-operating school budget. Legal services, and then down to the operation of the school building. So this is where you see it's a part-time position. There is still benefits for that part-time position. I've reduced a lot of the maintenance expenses. because the building would essentially be just functioning, heat in the winter, but not a lot of necessary items, excuse me, for supplies and for regular maintenance. There would be obviously wood chips and keep the heating going. And also due to the fact that there would still be busing, we've kept the busing the same, so that could potentially be helpful to parents getting kids to schools outside of Marlboro. That comes down to a budget bottom line of $3,381,878. And there's the page, which revenue is about the same as the last one, it just shows a different spending. So then you come to the tax documentation. You see the expenditure line that we just talked about. We have the offsetting revenues, which is the same as the other budget, including the $205,000 surplus. You get your net education spending of $3,115,997. We put in the estimated long-term weighted average daily membership of 192.72, and you get your spending at $16,168 per pupil. Again, if you go down the columns, you'll see that that is below the $16,470 threshold. So there's no penalty. Again, using the current yield at $8,553, and the estimated homestead tax rate in this scenario is 1.8904. So going down, that pretty much keeps your taxes where they currently are for the school portion of your tax rate. Again, high level estimated numbers, but you can see the difference between the cost of the two budgets.
Who is going to be paying for the busing?
Well, I tell you what, maybe now, if we're done with that, why don't we open it up to, and have Don moderate? You'll be the first question.
Oh, okay.
We have a question.
I don't understand, how much per pupil is busing, and who pays for it, and who's responsible for it?
So the school board is paying for it, it's part of the budget if they choose to continue to bus students. There is no requirement in Vermont law to bus students, but I think the board felt, and they can speak to that, that it was important to continue busing. So right now it's in the budget, you pay currently for the busing of the students, and if they were to go and do school choice, there may be one or two locations that the board would decide to continue to pay to get the kids there with the current buses that are owned by Marlboro.
Would they be able to bustle the Marlboro kids to wherever it is that they would be going to?
No. We would probably pick a select school, like say half the kids are going to Academy and the other half are going the other direction. We'd probably have two buses. We might even do a thing where, I'm just shooting off, but we might do a thing where we bus the way we currently do. We meet in the middle of town. We might be able to contract something with the mover. Right now the mover takes the BUHS kids into town. So it could be a situation like that where the mover takes the kids into Brattleboro. It could be a situation where we take everybody, we run the bus routes, take everybody to Marlboro School, and then there might be some shifting that happens. We haven't really worked out the logistics, but I think not having busing would be a significant hardship for a lot of families. And that's something that, if we can afford to provide it, that we are behind providing.
Yes, next question.
First of all, I want to say thank you for all this budget information. This is really welcome.
Thanks, Heidi.
You must have put in a lot of time, so thank you.
5-10 minutes, really.
My question is about the severance. I don't know if that's a usual, is that a practice from like other schools that have also closed? Or is that just something that Marlboro wants to do in effect to help people as they transition? And how many, it's pre-K and first, so it's, 210,000 for approximately.
No.
The severance package is only under option B, where we become non-operating. So the 21 employees, that would be divvied up somehow amongst them.
Gotcha.
And we
But
haven't,
is
we
that
haven't
something that
varied
we-
that number. This was just we just threw a number out. We said overestimate, just so that we're not underestimating and shocking people later. The idea was we were probably gonna base it somehow on longevity and like there's already a pay scale chart, somehow tied to
Is that
that.
something that other schools have done that close?
Not typically, but I would say that Marlboro has a very strong history of caring very deeply about their staff, and it seems in line with the Marlboro way, is how I would describe that.
And I will say that in the past, when people have left either a buyout or something like that, we've had individual arrangements with people. So it's not completely unprecedented that you say, okay, you're losing your job, we want to somehow, honor what you've done here for us.
Yeah, and the hope is that if something does change, it would change with enough notice for them to be able to hit the February teacher job market, because contracts are signed in April. And so we're cognizant of that as a board, that if the decision isn't made until March, that's an additional hardship on the teachers. And we're trying to avoid that. That's part of the reason we have two budgets here, is like, are we as a town ready to make this decision like basically now? Or do we want to wait a year? So that's kind of why we're presenting the two things. I mean, obviously something, maybe not obviously, but I think something probably is going to need to change. Sorry. Try to be louder. It's not usually a problem I have.
Other questions? Yes?
I just am wondering if this is a math assignment for some of you. But so the difference between these two budgets, if you had, say, if your property value was $300,000, is it possible to give us a sense of how much this would cost you per year?
So if you look at, so are you talking about the operating or non-operating?
I'm wondering what the difference would be. If
Well-
my property is $300,000, how much would it cost me for the school to stay open?
So on the two different calculating documents, you'll see a little line that says this is an increase per $100,000 house site. And so leaving this one up, I'm just going to the first one we had. And so $439 per 100,000. So you're looking at a $1,200 per $200 increase versus $3. Yeah, so.
Can you say that one more time? You're tailed off, I didn't hear the whole thing.
So for the operating, a $300,000 house based on, again, very high level, unknown numbers, I
Can't
just
say
want to
that
say
enough.
that. The estimate is $439 per 100,000, so you're looking at about a $1,300 increase for your taxes based on this model for keeping the school open. The non-operating shows a tax increase of $1, so that would be $3 for a $300,000 house.
But the tax rate's not going down over last year. So just to be clear that none of these have it decreasing because of all the basically forces outside of our control. The SU assessments, the health insurance rates, like none of that we as a school board can really change. It's with the tuition rates that are set by the other schools. So we're sort of at the whim of some other forces.
Well, and also your tax rate is at the whim of what the state legislature says is the ceiling for what you can make in order to get the reimbursement.
Right, the income sensitivity.
Income sensitivity, which they lower
Every year.
every year.
It's like the anti-inflation.
Yeah.
But I think, just to continue on that a little bit, if people here take these packets home and somebody asks that question who hasn't been here and doesn't want to, have to watch the entire thing, you can just point to what Heidi's embedded right on the cover pages of the approximate tax impact of the various different options.
Okay. Gail?
I have a question going back to that health insurance increase. Is Marlboro tied in, is that a state plan?
It is unfortunately state.
So we don't have any say in, okay.
Nobody does, unfortunately, at this point in time.
And not only can you not negotiate the price separately, you also cannot negotiate the percentage that the board pays versus what the staff pays. It's all set statewide standards.
Lauren Poster, I apologize for being late, so maybe you already covered this, but I come to these, as most of us do, these conversations as what's best for our kids, right? And Robin's question, and the answer to it is daunting. That's a big number, $1,200 for a $300,000 home. The taxes last year were daunting. But with such low numbers that we're looking at, what do you all feel, or what do the families that are currently enrolled, if money wasn't an object, what would their hopes and dreams educationally be for our town's kids?
That is such a complicated question. I mean, there's families in the audience. I have a kid. My kid is anxious and would like certainty. Like, she just wants to know what's gonna happen. With enough time to prepare, as long as she knows she's gonna be okay. That's my kid. Somebody else's kid might need the small community, I think that answer's gonna be a little different for everybody.
Yeah, I would say there's such a range. There are those who really would like us to continue and cherish the small classrooms and the connection with the teachers and all of that. And then there are folks who would like their kids to be able to access, other things that we really can't provide. And I mean, looking at a non-operational budget that only brings us exactly to the point of the per pupil expenditure, you couldn't decrease enough to hit that, no matter what. There's no way to get there.
And in I was just gonna say, in my brief conversations with some of the staff, there's no consensus among the staff either about what they think would be best for the children, or best for them individually, or, there's just, it's too complicated. And views of good education are complex and varied.
Lauren, what you did miss was that we had said early on that the school board has been meeting with Dana and the staff to try to, one, explain the situation, but has also opened up a line of anonymous communication. So any staff member who wants to can contact, happens to be Rachel, if they have something that they feel like they just want to be involved in the discussion and the decision making. So we've got avenues for obviously Dana and the entire staff to be hopefully heard and respected as they look at the kids and make if they have an opinion about how the kids would be best served, we hope to hear about it.
Okay, thanks. I had a two-part question going back to the budget figures. First is, and I guess this pertains mostly, oh, by the way, I'm Paul Butler. I live on Lower Dover Road. For the non-operating model especially, or for the K-1-2 model or whatever, pre-K, K-1 model, is there a significant difference in the tuition costs if kids went to Dover or kids went to Academy or something else, or is that relatively consistent? And also, are there any significant differences in things like assessments or test scores or student outcomes, depending on which of the options you were looking at here?
So the first part of that's probably an easier question to answer. There's not a lot of variance, but there is a variance. Part of being non-operational is that the families would have that choice, and so the board would not be able to control going to a cheaper one or vice versa, whatever. And that in my conversations with Dana, what we talked about was having some really good forums for families who have students, if we were going that route, to really bring in those other schools to do like a school fair, if you will, so that the families can meet the people, ask those questions about performance, and really get some data from those schools and learn not just about the hard data, but also like, what's it like there? Because this is a really unique place, and to just drop into a big school somewhere might be very different. And so to learn more about what the schools are like would be something that Dana would work with the families on, or the community to choose this route.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Dover is a big school, but the Academy is.
Academy's bigger,
significantly
yeah,
larger.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay, another question here? Yes, in the back?
I was just curious to know, for this current school year, how many students are currently tuitioned out to other schools already?
Only secondary.
Only secondary
secondary.
students, only the high school students.
Only the high school students?
So there's students that go to private schools that we don't pay tuition to, but because of Act 73, I believe they were grandfathered in if you were already attending a private school, no?
For the high school.
For the
For the
high
high
school.
school, if you're already attending a private high school, you're grandfathered in until you're done. But nobody could now go to a private high school, like you couldn't go to Hilltop, for example, or the grammar
St.
school,
Michael's.
Yeah.
you know, any of the private elementaries, that would have to be out of pocket for the parent. The town would only, so if there are people, which there are people that go to some private schools, private elementary schools, if they chose to keep their child in that school, we would not be paying tuition for that child. We made assumptions, assuming that we would be, because again, it's always better to over budget than not have enough. So these budget numbers may end up being a little lower if those people are like, you know what, my kid's happy here and I got a pretty good scholarship, I'm just gonna stay. That's a possibility.
But it is really true that when you're looking at tuition numbers, they can change so drastically. So I think what Heidi's done is just say, we don't want 5 kids to move in and choose to be tuition payments and not have it included in the budget. So it's safer to have a little bit of a cushion there.
Yes.
I thought you might have been going somewhere else, but that was an interesting answer, so I'll take it this other place. I know when my daughter was entering junior high, a couple of kids left. And I forget where they went, or, but, so have there been a lot of kids, or what number of kids that live here that otherwise would be going here, like not tuitioning, but how many have left? The only reason I ask that is that they would otherwise be here, I guess, and for personal reasons, for educational reasons, whatever they aren't, and they're not likely coming back. So is that, and I think that's part of the challenge, is when we lose anybody, it's a smaller population. And so I do worry that, just like you're saying, well, we don't know how I don't think parents necessarily know what they're gonna do. And so it could get a little bit smaller even. So
Yeah.
is it a modest number? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it?
So this year, just as an example, there were a couple of families who decided to do other things because of the size of the kindergarten. So that was 2. We have some kids who are leaving, but not because their families are choosing to leave the school. Last year, I think there were 2 or 3. So, 3 to 5, let's say, a year maybe. But maybe, that's an overestimate.
So that's part of the dream.
That's part of it, yeah.
Is just, it's kind of snowballing, which is, I think, what this gentleman.
Yeah, I mean, the big issue is the birth rate.
Yeah, of
because it's just not sustainable classroom sizes. And when we talk about wanting to do what's best for our kids, they need to have a cohort. And those much younger kids don't have any sort of a cohort, which is very challenging.
And just to add to that, the assumption here is that the kids that are born are 100% coming here, which may or may not be the case.
Okay, in the back.
Yeah, one of my concerns about closing our school before there's sort of any clarity on the state level is that here we are, you say we have school choice,
we all make a difficult decision to figure out what's next for our family or for our kids, and then all of a sudden, there's clarity on the state level in a year or two, and then oops, actually, you don't have that choice anymore, your kids actually need to go there, and so that we have these little kids that are bouncing around to different schools because we have so little clarity right now. So I guess the weight between money and kids is a really hard, it's a really hard scale. It's hard for me to imagine my taxes going up, and yet I urge everybody to keep the kids in mind right now as much as you can. I think that in our world that has so much that is unclear, trying to create a little bit of clarity so that we only have one change would be amazing. So that's where I'm coming from, even though money is not easy for me right now. Not coming to that, I'm coming to that with my heart, and I hope that we can come to that as a town as well, with the kids in mind, because honestly, I have a long history with this school, and I've been a kid and a teacher and a parent here, and I know that this place puts the kids first, and so I'm hoping that as a town, we can also do that right now in this really rocky time.
Thank you, Erica.
If I could, just a couple of comments about that. What you're referring to is Act 73 and the impetus to merge smaller districts into larger ones. Absolutely may be coming down the pike. I am going to put our state representative on the spot, maybe not right now, but a little bit later to talk about Act 73, but maybe with the perspective that you're talking about. What are the chances? Is it obviously going to change in the next few years, or do we get a breathing spell here? So you can be thinking about that, Emily. And
happy to talk anytime.
Yeah.
They put me up here for a reason.
If we did have a choice district for a short time, we could also become an unchoice district if something happens with Act 73. That doesn't help the multiple transitions potentially, like if somebody chooses to go to Dover and then the state is like, well, you're actually gonna go to Brattleboro. So that doesn't help with that. Yeah, and that's the difficulty.
Is there any chance they would?
Can you go say that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so there is the chance that if we became a choice district now, we could, in a couple of years, depending on what the state does, become an unchoice district. We could vote to undo what we did. This is not like a permanent, the school's not dead forever kind of thing. We could resurrect it if there were more students, right? I mean, that was the original idea, was that if we became a choice district, we could revitalize the school if there was, I don't know, a population boom or something, and a bunch of people moved to town. Potentially down the road, I forgot what I was saying, so.
It would not solve the problem of the example child who was going to academy, let's say.
Right. Yes.
And then we became part of the district that was not academy, but was Dover, Wardsboro, then that child would have to move again.
And that would be frustrating.
And that would be, so.
But depending on how long it took, I mean, a lot of schools you switch at 6th grade anyway, so if it's 5 years down the road, that might happen. I don't know.
I guess one of the things I'm wondering is whether, like with independent school choice, folks were grandfathered to be able to stay where they were. I wonder if, and I don't know, the legislature might also.
We could talk to our representative about that.
So, Emily.
You can certainly hear my opinion.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so how do I start phrasing this? The two budgets are actually, their total hard dollars are actually pretty close to each other, $400,000. And in well, both budgets, we have this surplus that is helping buy down the tax rate. I'm assuming, and maybe this isn't a good assumption, that being non-operational, the budget is going to be there'll be less surplus. It'll be a lot more predictable. So probably in future years, there won't be that $200,000 to buy down the tax rate. And clearly, $400,000 moves us from zero tax increase to that hypothetical $1,200. A big, and so what is that if next year that $200,000 we don't exist, does that kick us over this threshold that we're not way on one side by closing, we're like right at it?
There's one-time expenses in there, quite a number of them.
Right, I was just gonna say the severance package, which is 210,000 is a one-time thing. Once you got a year of operating a building without kids in it, we probably could shave off more building expenses. We could change how you're having it covered, I don't know, volunteers could check on the bill. There are things that the board can do. The busing piece, you may find that might be cheaper than what we're putting in there. It's really hard to say for sure, depending on if all the kids went to Academy School and you needed one bus, that's one bus run and not necessarily 4 part-time people. So but you have a valid point. Tuition is only gonna go up,
Although it's predictable to a certain degree.
Right. It doesn't increase more than 5%. It can't increase more than 5% year over year. The other thing is our assessments, and as we just explained to the SU board last night, we are with enrollment going down. That's going to change. If this school were closed, there will be less special education people. We are looking for more efficiencies. The enrollment is going down across the board. However, there is at least a quarter of the population currently in our SU that are on IEPs, and so there is strong needs right now, and intervention services for kids that aren't meeting grade level. But we're hoping in this next year to really reevaluate all that. We are very cognizant of the fact that taxpayers can't afford their taxes, and it is the forefront of our mind every single day as we work to help with the bottom line.
And another variable she didn't mention was the declining grants from the federal government.
Yes, that has
which
impacted
drives
it.
up the cost of the assessments from the SU to
That was
the
a
districts as well.
Huge thing this year because there's a lot of unknowns. And so a year from now, I'm hoping we'll know better about what federal grants will look like. Right now, I'm just expecting 2 next year, but it would be great if they continued all the grants that we've had. But we're looking at about 700,000 less next year at the SU level to divvy up some of these special ed expenses, so.
And we also had in the tuitioning numbers, the assumption that some number of kids that are currently homeschooling or going to private schools would go to public school and want tuition. And if they decide to not change their schooling situation, that would just be money back in pockets. So there is quite a bit of cushion built into the model that we have.
Yeah. So back in the day when I sat with you guys, and we were talking about what it would look like to designate a high school and how that would impact the taxes if we sent all the kids to Brattleboro, for instance, right? And there have been several acts that have come in and gone over the few years since then, and we're talking about kids that are not high school level, but is that something that would address Erica's concerns if instead of having it be open choice, we close the school and we tuition at whatever public school parents wanted to go to, would it be even possible to say to the community, what would it look like if we picked a school district to be part of, and that would at least create stability, if not desirability?
I think the designation law is still in place, but I think it's only for high schools.
But it's high schools.
It's only high schools, yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but it's absolutely on the table. There's a lot of discussion about designation, expanding it, using that in place of that type of thing, but nothing is,
So basically, we're waiting for the state to come in and tell us, we're gonna make you do this, like they love to do, with Act 73.
If not for Act 73 and we were
It's not.
facing these numbers, we could make a mega classroom with 3 or 4 grades in one class and do mixed levels, but we have to only do 2 in a class, and that's why this looks like this. And so, I mean, we could have a class of 25 kids, they would just be grades like 1 through 4.
Hey, remember that?
We all went through that.
I mean,
And
and
look
I
what
think,
happened to us.
you know, I think historically, that was the norm in a rural area, is that you'd have a one-room schoolhouse with everybody that was in school, you know, learning to read and write at various levels, and they would differentiate. But that's not the way the state says we have to do it, so we have to.
So, yeah, I want to follow up on that point with a question for you, Emily. And I appreciate all the work you do, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but in a lot of this conversation, it honestly feels like the state is hostile towards our little town, especially in our time of need. And it's hard to look at those two budgets and say, they're not that far apart. Oh, but the state is going to penalize us a tremendous amount of money for wanting to keep our school open. Now, I understand it's not the state's fault per se that we have low birth rate here or everywhere in the state. Or maybe it is. I don't know. That's a question. But I guess I would just like to get a sense. I mean, I would love to think that the state was an entity that we could rely on for support in a time of need. And it just feels the opposite of that. And again, I know that's oversimplifying it to a tremendous degree, but.
happy to respond if you.
Please.
So totally hear you and totally understand that feeling. And in fact, y'all know I'm a school board member too. We're feeling it not just in Marlboro, although it's acute in Marlboro, but it's hitting everywhere. And the birth rate thing, there's a lot more, there's a lot more to unpack around that one, because that's not just in Vermont. The thing I would caution about Act 73 is today was the last day of the redistricting task force. Their last meeting was today. They've been hearing your concerns, what you're mentioning, and what everybody's been saying all across the state. I think there's over 5,000 people, and they've had pieces of emails and phone calls and all sorts of people testifying at every single meeting, protesting and saying similar things. So we've all been hearing it, and the state's been hearing it. I've said this to all of you before. I voted against this bill for all the reasons that we're concerned about here, but to be honest, the pushback to the legislature to reduce property tax rates really was the reason why this bill got traction last year. Now, the bill came from the governor and the administration, but it didn't, they don't make laws. So the legislature took that suggestion and went with it. I hear you about the class size minimums. I've been very concerned about the class size minimums. I represent only rural areas, and every rural area is losing enrollment. They just are. And it's a huge impact, and it's making, really big decisions. I can't predict. I wish I could predict what's going to happen when we go back in January. But I can say that, you all read the news probably, and the governor was very upset that the task force didn't come out with what his expectation was, which was new boundaries around school districts and maps. But the reason why they didn't was because of the feedback of Vermonters and people like yourselves. And so I would just say we're listening. But healthcare is blowing up. Housing needs to be dealt with. We bought down your property tax rates this year again. So we talk about how much they went up, but they would have gone up a lot more if the legislature hadn't put $120 million into buying down property tax rates. I always oppose the concept of buying down property tax rates, whether it's local or statewide. I think it's a mistake to do it because, you know, you're going to pay that eventually no matter what. And we are going to pay that eventually no matter what. And I really worry about what our numbers look like. I mean, Heidi and Bob are doing the best they can with what they know, and it's true, you'll know more. Revenues are still okay from the Joint Fiscal Office is telling us, and our revenue predictors are telling us things are still okay, but it's not going to continue to be okay where we're going to have those kinds of revenues to buy down property taxes. So there's that reality, and I know there's a lot of feeling that the legislature's clamping down, and in many ways they are. I absolutely hate the excess spending threshold. There was a time when it worked. I mean, it really did, but it's just penalizing those who can least afford to pay it, right? And so I'm really opposed to that. I want to see that change. But it's a statewide property tax. We don't set it in the legislature. We just set the numbers based on what's passed locally. And the numbers are high because the costs have gone up and the needs have gone up. And I don't see that changing either. So you're facing what everyone else is facing. I would just say you're facing it in a real tougher time and tougher way right now.
You have a question? Yeah, I just want to add to what you just said, Emily. I think the other thing that really upset the governor was that the task force, the majority of the task force said, you're not going to save any money by doing this. And that was not what, and that was his whole rationale for doing this in the first place. And so, yeah.
But to be fair, if we did what he wanted to do and turn over the decision making to a body outside of your local town, and there's a foundation formula, the state will then control how much money you get to spend. So I can't tell you what it's going to look like in the future if we move to a foundation formula because I don't know what the decisions will be. I just don't. But I do know people are clamoring for lower property tax rates. So, you know, that means that we either have to shift how we fund away from property taxes, and then they're going to pay it some other way. And then we'll hear, you know, that income taxes are too high or whatever we choose to go to. So and you just mentioned the second homeowner tax. One of the recommendations that's been coming to the legislature, I will just say, even if I will be opposing any movement toward a foundation formula unless we understand what our governance system is going to look like. I want to put kids first, just like Lauren, you said, and everyone's been saying in the room. We need to know what we need for our children. What do our children need? So a foundation formula without those discussions being imposed is just, again, more like a penalty. And so I'm going to oppose that, but I will say if that's happens, it could happen. I mean, there were a lot of us who voted against that bill, but they still had the votes to pass it. And so I can't predict what might happen, but there's a lot of pushback right now on spending.
And if I could say, just in response to your point, Adrian, just keep in touch with the legislature and everybody else. Wendy Harrison, our Windham County Senator, is also on Senate Ed, so we have just terrific representation.
It's not her who's on Senate Ed.
It's not her, I'm sorry.
She's on the task force.
She's on the task force. Anyway, we have wonderful representation here in terms of people on the education committees that we need to be in touch with them. And just make our feelings known so that they don't disappear in the kind of drumbeat of just reducing property taxes.
Yes, if I could just add that, as Emily referred to, we do have other funding methods. One of them is the discrepancy between second homes and residents, and the other one, of course, is an income tax. That's another way of funding education.
So there are ways to move forward even without a foundation formula with some changes to our tax laws. And one of them, and I don't think there's any question we're going to do that. We're going to decouple the non-residential into two things, second homeowners and commercial. Right now, they're all one, so our commercial businesses, our businesses in the state of Vermont need that stability of a stable tax rate, but the second homeowners have been, because it's a non-residential rate, they've been enjoying that stability as well. So we're gonna decouple them, and I don't see that changing. That's gonna happen, and that will help, because we'll be able to raise a little more revenue. Will it be enough to fix our problems more? Oh, that I know. There's other options too. I mean, last year we had two bills that were, or the year before we had two bills that were proposed on a wealth tax and a high, anybody who's making, an income tax for anyone over $500,000 a year or $1 million a year or whatever, higher tax rates. We have had those conversations. They usually don't get a lot of traction. But again, hearing from Vermonters, it's making a difference with the redistricting task force, I will say. So I agree with Dan. Reach out.
Questions? Yeah, Paul? I disagree with you, Emily, on one thing, which is that the overall problem is just the property tax. I think I've got the intimation here that we could go with the non-operating budget B, or we could keep budget A. We have the $300,000 home that taxes go up $1,400 or whatever. But still, a year or two down the road, based on the bar chart page, we're back to looking at budget B again. So I think the thing that is driving this problem and has left us in this situation, and we've had local control of our schools since the 1770s here, is the overall costs. And I wonder, what are the primary drivers of the massive increase in the costs? Is it
That's right.
just healthcare, or is it construction costs?
What you heard me say was the impetus behind the push for Act 73 was property tax rates. That's not my perspective. I mean, right. and I will tell you, one of the things that's coming out of the task force, the redistricting task force, is we need to know what those cost drivers are. We need to identify them. We need to put dollars behind them. We need to understand that before we can take those next steps. I'm going to say something positive about the redistricting task force. They have unpacked, I said this last night at a meeting that Dan and I were at, and they were at. It has unpacked a whole bunch of data that we've never been able to get our hands on before. They've dug in a way that I have been really impressed in that very short time frame they've had to do the work they've been able to do. To start a foundation for a new conversation to have. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to slow things down because what's been barreling straight ahead, I tried to slow it down in the legislature last winter, that didn't work, move forward, but I think the feedback is being heard. And I think that, when people go home and talk to their constituents, when legislators go home, and there's 180 of us, we go home, we talk to our constituents, they tell us they're not happy. We will listen to them, and I think the feedback has been pretty universal across the state of Vermont. This isn't just a rural area problem either. Chittenden County schools are sending the task force all kinds of pushback on Act 73 as well. So that's why I am not going to have any opinion about the decision that you folks make in Marlboro, because it's not my decision to make, but I caution anyone to make any assumptions about what next steps will be. That's all I'm saying, because I don't know what it's going to look like. There's talk right now of this bill falling apart, and then there's other people talking about barreling ahead with it, and it could go either way, or likely somewhere in between.
And if I could just add just one thing about the unpacking of information. Also, not only is it more easily findable now, whether it actually saves money to become larger districts, but what do educational outcomes look like as well? Finally, that information that teachers have been sending off, click the little thing and off it goes and nobody ever sees it again, is finally becoming available. So you could say, okay, well, let's look, do small schools actually perform as well, not as well? So that's another interesting piece of information that now we have access to.
Question in the back? Yep.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of tying off what Paul said of like that it seems like either one of these options, like or the first option, maintaining the school open, is not going to be a long-term solution. I'm speaking as someone who has, in either one of these options, my kid won't be attending Marlboro, which is kind of devastating for me. And so really the question is like whether or not time for either students or teachers is beneficial that the year, maybe, probably not 2 years, but to, yeah, I guess settle into the fact that the school is closing. I think is really probably what's going to happen, because you don't get to just lose a grade every year. You know, it's coming. And I guess I want to throw my hat behind Erica in that, as someone who will not see benefit for my kids at Marlboro and have a family that makes $40,000 a year, I'm okay spending extra $1,200 next year if it was beneficial to the students here and teachers as they sit with this decision or with the reality. And so, but it's, yeah, keying into Paul's point that it's not like keeping the school open. I think everyone sees those numbers. It's not moving any other direction.
We got time for 2 more questions.
I was gonna say something about this as well. I mean, the reality of the situations we're making, like imperfect decisions and imperfect moments, and I think it's hard, but I on one hand, like Erica, I totally hear you, and I want my kid to be able to come here next year. On the other, there's also the reality that like if the staff knows that there's only 1 more year, they would be looking for jobs this February just like they would if they knew there wasn't going to be another year. And the other part that makes me really worried is that my kid is here next year and we're scrambling to get substitutes and teachers, and like that also feels like not a great situation for the kids or for the staff or community to be in. And so on one hand, I wish we could like prolong all of this for another year, although it seems like this kind of inevitability because of the demographics that it would just be 1 more year. I think just the reality of what that means and the choices people then have to make, it's not like next year will be like every other year at Marlboro. And I will also say, you know, working at a college, you know, in the midst of it closing, like everyone suffers from it. It's not like you just get to act like everything's the same for a whole year. So that also, I think, you know, on one hand, I want my kid to be in this place that he loves. On the other hand, I think it could be hard for our kids to be here and see it kind of falling apart in front of them.
That's what I've been wondering.
One more question, just one more.
Yeah, so my daughter's 3, and I think no matter what happens with Act 73, like I'm looking at these graphs and I don't see anything making a cohort of classes together. And that's hard. And I think like I'm with Thorne and Erica about like if it's the money to like keep the experience for the kids here for a year, like, yeah, I mean, it would be hard, but we could do it, but then like, I can't imagine doing this every year. And like, I'm just like thinking add to that. And I'm thinking too, like I'm with Thorne that like, I mean, like we've got the 2 3-year-olds, and like if there's 2 3-year-olds, like my daughter will be going somewhere else. Like I can't imagine like paying for a different public school and those tax increases, and I just don't know how. So it's sort of like what happens after next year. And yeah, if it's really better for next year, like, sure.
Don, I would like to acknowledge Doug sitting in the back. He was a school board chair here for many, many years. It seems like appropriately.
I do thank Jamie for bringing that up, because I was worried about staff. You know, staff are going to be looking for what's in their own interests, and they should. I can't fault them that. I did want to throw back to a decision we had to make a few years ago about the middle school, and there was a lot of fear about that. And there was, and all that fear that came up kind of projected on me, and then my kid went down to BUHS, and is thriving and is doing great. And I just kind of felt like, oh, okay, change isn't that bad. And we're in a moment of huge change, right? So I think you need to hold that and know that the decisions you make for your kids are going to be the best. But I feel like as a town, to ask them to pay like an extra mortgage payment for losing band, for potentially losing staff and not being able to rehire, for lack of less peers, and God forbid we don't have a soccer team next year, I'm dead. My kid's gonna be so mad. But I just feel like the state's gonna do what the state wants to do. It's not gonna happen until 2029. And the response to the governor was, you should really let towns do what they want. And if we are set up already with what we want, they're probably not gonna do this, is my opinion. So.
Okay, is it time for closing arguments? Closing comments? All right, I have closing comments. It's not that, yes, we should get to do what we want, but none of this is what we want.
No, that's true.
That is true.
Well, I think I would like to give everybody at the table a chance to have their closing comments. I can't thank you all and the people who have Zoomed in tonight enough. This has been absolutely wonderful way to engage with an incredibly difficult situation, and everybody has been thoughtful and respectful, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody. Well, Heidi, you're the MVP right now.
Yeah.
With all your budgets. I know how that
hate
is.
delivering bad news, let me tell you. I hate my job right now.
It's hard to be a bearer of bad news. But really, everyone here, thank you for coming down here. Dana, thank you for all you do, Bob, and everybody. And all of you all for being a part of this discussion. It's so important for the town to keep showing up. And if you have any other comments that you feel like you didn't get to say, that you would like the school board to know, if you send them to any one of us, we will share them with all of us. And our goal is to represent what the town wants, within, the mission of putting the students first. But, so as your representatives, we hope to represent you. So thank you for all that.
Yeah, just thank you for coming and sharing.
One more question on that.
So Timothy Whitney online, if you would please unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Well, I was looking or listening to what was going on here, and there's supposed to be another meeting coming up. Based on what has been said regarding the governor, the task force, and all, and the pushback on to the task force, what might you expect the next meeting to look like?
Well, for one thing, we will have the yield figures from the state, which are at this point are estimates, probably pretty good. But those come out nominally December 1st. We usually get them by the 10th or whatever. So that's why we chose a meeting after the 10th, a meeting date. Yield figure is going to be better. More information about the task force the redistricting task force final report is due on December 1st. And that will give us a lot of insight into something. I don't know what. It'll just help with us being able to maybe define a little bit better what our options and restrictions might be. Anybody else? What other things are we going to have access to?
I should have more data to have a more specific tax implication at that point in time, because I should have a definitive long-term weighted ADM. We'll have a good idea about the yield. I believe CLAs should come out with the adjustment. So the documents that I put together that were high level will be much more specific and more accurate at that point in time.
And also, just one more thing, I think Bob and I have been working with the lawyers on what the ballots might look like, what is actually legal, and if it is legal, how do you accomplish it? So we will know more about that. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that this is a weeknight, and there may be people who can't come to a meeting on a weeknight that can come on a Saturday morning, and so we can hear more from the town. And there may be similar questions, and that's fine, because we may have slightly different answers.
Hopefully better ones, or more accurate ones, anyway.
It'll still be sad.
It's more accurate.
Yes.
At least you can
More
make an
accurate.
informed decision.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's one reason, as we did before, have 2 different times, so that.
Okay? Well,
Yeah, no, absolutely, please, yeah.
Okay, so if any of you have not put your name on this list, so we know that you were here, please come up and add your name, if you haven't already.
And
Okay?
Emily, our well-respected representative sitting in a blue chair here, had.
She got
so
so nice.
Hard
The chair's
chair.
so nice. It's actually pretty comfortable. I hurt my back today lifting a wood stove, so I'm struggling with it, but, yeah, my brother and I were moving a wood cook stove. I just wanted to say 2 things. One is that, regarding more information, what we'll know, I would encourage everyone to really look at that redistricting task force report that's coming out. They spent hours today. I didn't watch it, but I clipped into it a few times. I got some text messages from people who were there. They really did do a lot of work on it today. They're gonna finalize it very soon. It's very important information, and I encourage everybody to look at it, read it. It'll be big, many pages. And I also wanted to just say something about these meetings and your board. I have been so impressed with the grace and dignity and respect that has been shown here during this really challenging time. I've been a school board member a really long time, and this is not the first time I've been through these conversations. I mean, even just with you, Bob, and you haven't been around all that long, but on this as a superintendent. But Jamaica, has been really hard, and the conversation, that school it's open for pre-K only right now, and that's barely. And I was there with the Brookline school closing and watching the Wyndham unfold, and it's been so challenging up there. The respect in this community right now and the support for your school and your kids is just really admirable. And I just wanted to say thank you to the board for that, because it's really, you're very fortunate to have, you live here and to have that. And I think it's important that we all acknowledge that.
And we didn't put her up to this either.
No, they didn't. But it is true.
Thank you.
Okay, is that, we good?
Thank you.
I will entertain the motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
That's non-debatable. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks again, everybody.